Hello, lovely people. You have tuned in to What's Your Advice? Are you having imposter syndrome, facing a burnout, finding it hard to make your voice heard as an underrepresented professional? Today's episode, we have Denise Ang, a fellow Singaporean, to share with us her take on this question. How
Hi,
is
Alice.
starting?
I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you so much for willing to do this with me. And as you know, I'm also learning along the way. So having you here and as a fellow Singaporean, that kind of makes the whole episode so much warmer, although it's so cold outside here. So Denise, as
Yeah,
an
it's been
Asian,
raining.
yeah. So Denise, as an Asian female living in San Francisco, what's your advice for getting our voice heard, especially as an Asian woman professional in a non-Asian country?
That's a really great question, Alice. I think for Asians, one of the main challenge that we face, especially for Asian women like ourselves, is on speaking up and getting our voice heard.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, the challenge is in our minds. Like we think a lot in terms of like whether we have useful things to say, whether we have any useful comments to make, whether other people already like thought about such questions or comments that we're going to make. So we self-censor ourselves before we even say anything. So I think one of the most important thing about speaking up is to first manage your inner critic and trust that you have something important to say and trust your voice. Some advice I would give is to know that what you want to voice is about voicing for impact and not just for visibility alone.
Mm-hmm.
So really think about whether you are providing value for people, whether you are really trying to add to the conversation and not just trying to get your voice heard. And some things that I find useful is to be very specific, and you can always ask questions. You don't always have to make a comment and come up with something intelligent. Sometimes the most important thing that help drives the conversation forward is somebody asking a question and try to bring everybody back to the topic. So that is something that is important and useful tip that I found when you are trying to speak up so that people will listen to you. I would add that some other things that could be useful is to remove some of the weak languages that we tend to use sometimes. Like sometimes you'll say, oh, sorry, but I have this, or like you say something like just adding to the conversation. So some of these languages does not help in terms of getting people to listen to you. So it can be very helpful to remove some weak languages.
Yeah.
The last point I would add, Alice, is that it's important to also help amplify other people's voices. Because sometimes it's not like just about you speaking up. The more you can help other people amplify their voices, adding to their points, it's also very useful to help you when you want to speak up.
Right.
And next time when you're speaking up, maybe like you have a group of people who are supporting you and who are also amplifying your voices. So find your allies, find your squad who can help amplify your voices so that when you speak up and when everyone speaks up, everybody gets heard.
Right. The last point is really interesting. And if I may, I'd like you to expand on that. When you say amplify others to voice out, are you saying that I voice out by saying, oh, Denise has a question. How do I amplify others to speak up? It would be weird, right? So, oh, Alice is speaking up by saying Denise has a question. Then that makes me look silly. So, and Denise may feel, oh, but I can raise my hand and ask the question on my own. I don't need Alice to speak up for me. So, what do you mean by the last point?
Right. So I think there are at least two different ways that one can help amplify the voices of others. Sometimes, if you find somebody who is very quiet, who has not spoken up in the meeting, just by asking the person, say, hey, Alice, do you have anything to add? That helps the person to speak up if they are really thinking of something in their mind, or they'll just say, no, I'm happy with the conversation. So giving somebody an opportunity to speak up, especially when you see somebody has been quiet in a meeting, is a way to help amplify their voice. Second, when somebody is already speaking up, like they made a point, and you felt that they made a very good point, you could amplify the point by saying that I agree with that point and let me add on to that point, for example. So those are different ways of amplifying the voices of other people.
Yeah, that's a good tip, actually. Thank you very much. And I also particularly like your earlier sentence, your advice that picking up can be asking questions. It doesn't mean speaking up means you need to be the next Einstein coming with a solution or a save the world kind of answers, right? So yeah, it can be just raising questions to even clarify, because your thoughts are also an important source during meetings for the speaker and even for the team to realize that, oh yeah, thank you for asking that question, because I too have the same doubt. So that really helps to get the conversation going and make the discussion more productive. So I really like that advice that you have shared with us. However, in our culture, we are often brought up in families, right? Including my very strict conservative upbringing, that our parents, well, whether they like it or not, unknowingly, they tend to compare us with other kids or relative kids. And subsequently, we ourselves compare ourselves with our peers, with our classmates. So what's your advice for us to beat that imposter syndrome, for thinking that we are always not good and others are better?
That's a very important question, Alice. It is imposter syndrome has been something that has come up a lot in recent years. And the interesting thing is that a lot of us do have imposter syndrome, whether your executives down to the lowest level, whether you say it out or not. It is a very common thing that's happening right now. And at the root of imposter syndrome is really fear. So fear is at the root of everything. There's fear that you are not good enough, fear that you'll be found as a fraud, fear that other people are better than me, fear of failure, fear of judgment. So there's a lot of fears that surround imposter syndrome. And one of the things that is very useful is to manage your inner voices again, your inner critic. So this keeps coming a lot because all of us have voices inside of us that's telling us about how we are not good enough, how we are like better, other people are better than us, right? So it's very important to learn how to manage your inner voices. Some of the tips that I could give as an example is when you face this imposter syndrome, have these inner voices inside your mind, one of the things you could do is to practice distancing. So think of yourself as, say, somebody like your friend that you're advising. Like, how would you advise your friend? Like, try to see yourself as a friend that you're advising. That helps create a little bit of distance. Another way is that you could call your own name. Like, if I'm having this imposter syndrome, I say, hey, Denise, you are having these thoughts. Like, how real are they? Like, think about whether it's true. And the other thing you could do is to really appreciate yourself for the qualities that brought you to where you are today. Think about all the past successes that lead you to where you are today, and appreciate yourself for that. So that could help build up your confidence about what you are capable of and help you manage that imposter syndrome better.
Yeah, I think the appreciating ourselves is really important, because indeed we tend to bash ourselves, we put ourselves down, we think we're not good enough, and it's such an innate thing in humans, right? You are so spot on. It doesn't matter whether you're a senior executive or just a person behind the desk. Every one of us has that inner voices clouding us and putting us down. Like in the movie, the pizza movie, remember, I can't remember the title now, but it's the characters represent fear, happy, joy. It's so true. And one of the inner voices is keep telling the little girl, and she's sadness. Oh yeah, she's sadness. So whenever she think of sad memories, and she just become depressed. And no matter how joy try to come into her memory or into her inner voice saying that, hey, remember we have good times too, but we just let sadness and negative thoughts pull us down. Yeah. I know you are also a fantastic mom to a 9-year-old girl. So what's your advice to others, especially working moms, on juggling work and family? I mean, you raise all these good points. You're a corporate lady yourself, have to beat imposter syndrome, have to prevent burnout. So how do you manage that as well with being a working mom?
Yes, burnout is one of the more important topic. I would say many of us who are, coming out of the pandemic and still going through some of the effects of pandemic right now will feel burnt out. It is really very, very difficult to try to balance both work and family. And so I think it is such an important topic, and it's so important to figure out like how to manage that with all the demands that we face today. We have demands from everywhere, from your work, from your family, for yourself as well. And I like to think of burnout as that feeling where it is too much yet not enough. I feel like I have too much things to do, but sometimes it feels a little bit empty. Like, are you working on the right things? Are all these things that are necessary to be done? So my advice is to start with digging deeper into yourself, really understanding what your values are, what you stand for, what's your purpose here, and what is the vision that you have for yourself, and really work on getting a lot of clarity around your values, your mission, your purpose, and your vision. Once you have that, then the next step would be to draw boundaries around what you want to work on and what you want to work on, and stick to them. I always say that if you don't draw your boundaries, other people will draw it for you. So it'll be best if you are the person drawing your own boundaries instead of letting other people draw the boundaries for you.
Yeah.
But you can only draw your boundaries if you really know what you want. So it's really important to dig deeper into yourself and understanding what you value. And the other thing that is useful to remember as well is that if you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So the best tool and the easiest tool I found is just to say no. So there is nothing easier than that. But again, you want to say no to the things you really don't want, and you want to go towards the things that you really want. And that is my advice for how you can advocate for yourself on what really matters to you.
Yeah, that's a very powerful one, because when you say yes and try to please everybody, then you are indeed closing the doors and saying no to many other things that could be more important to you, which link back to your very first point about what's therefore are your values, what are your purpose, what are your vision and mission. So if family is top on your list, then if you say yes to all the requests coming from your friend to help to do a simple task, and a simple task can grow to from 1 to 10 in the list, and that takes away time from your family, then that is time to set the boundaries and say no. That's and I would also say, I will add one more point, if I may, is that besides all the three fantastic advice that you've given, is that if you really feel on the verge of burnout, do talk to somebody. Talk to somebody that you trust, that you feel you can open yourself up to. Because many times I personally felt that it really feels much better after I talk it out and express how I feel. And the person may not be able to help us, but to have someone to listen to us actually really matters. And it's very important that we feel there's someone out there listening to us. So I would encourage anyone who on the verge of, or even if you are doubtful whether you are having burnout, just talk to people. And I think that's also the difference between men and women. Women find it easier to bring up topics like this, and men may find it harder. So I still think, therefore, it's good that they learn to share as well, and they can talk to anyone that they feel comfortable with. So
That's very true.
yeah. And I really like what you are shared today. All your advices are really practical tips. I myself have some key things to take away, and I do feel I myself can use some of the advices that you have shared. You know, finding a squad, not to overthink. That is one downside of me. I tend to overthink. So your reminder definitely helps. I like to throw in a bonus question to all my guests. So you currently living in San Francisco. If given a chance, would you prefer to stay in Singapore or you would choose this path all over again?
I would choose the path that would be closer to my values and my purpose and my vision. I wish that I have done that whole exercise earlier, and I wish they teach that in school. I think that's one of the part that is missing in school, which is teaching kids what to identify their values, to identify like what their purpose is, to identify their vision, and having the tools to master how they can transform negative thoughts into positive ones and manage their inner critic. So if I can choose all over again, I want to get to that stage earlier, knowing where I want to go will then be very in line with my values. I want to live a life that is very aligned and consistent with my values and my mission and work towards my vision. I want to not have to figure out what I want to run away from, but rather like what I want to run towards. So that would be what I want to do.
Yeah, that's a very powerful last statement. Somewhere that we want to run towards to and not run away from. And don't we all tend to do that when we were younger? We thought that, oh, okay, I don't like this job, or I don't do well. Oh, it's time to look for a new job. Actually, we should be looking for jobs. Our only move when it is aligned with our own values, with our own goals in mind. What's the end point in mind, and not run away because there's a problem. Yeah, that's very powerful. Thank you very much, Denise. It's been a pleasure having you today, and I love all your sharing. I hope our audience will be able to take away the advices that Denise has shared with us today. Until then, next episode, I'll see you in What's Your Advice?